Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Alto Madness, a Charlie Parker Centennial celebration tonight. We're glad that you could join us and be with us for this very special evening with two masters of the alto saxophone, Charles Mcpherson and Donald Harrison. Before we do that, I just want to thank our presenters, NJ Pack and Jazz Standard, as well as our program sponsor, TD Bank, for this program, and they are the sponsor for our entire jazz series that is ongoing here. So we want to thank all of them tonight as well. So without further ado, I'm going to bring our guests on one by one here. Donald Harrison was born in the great Crescent City of New Orleans, truly a city like no other in the US for its culture. If you've been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Donald has had the great fortune of playing and recording with such legends as Art Blakey, Miles Davis, Roy Haynes, Ron Carter, Lena Horne, Dr. Lonnie Smith, Eddie Palmieri, to Digital Planets, the notorious B.I.G., and even the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, to just name a handful. There's many more. He has starred in 9 episodes of HBO's Treme series. Donald's own recorded output is vast and runs a wide range of styles, including a hybrids of his own creation, such as nouveau swing and quantum jazz, and where he takes some of the aspects of quantum physics and figured out a way to bring that into his music. He's been a mentor also to many great artists, from Jonathan Batiste and Christian Scott to the notorious B.I.G. and Esperanza Spalding even. So I'm going to now bring Donald into the program here.
I think I'm here.
Awesome. Got you there. Excellent. All right. Now I'm going to also welcome Donald. Thank you for being here, first off. Now I'm going to bring in the great Charles Mcpherson too. So for over 50 years, Charles Mcpherson has been one of the most expressive and highly regarded voices in jazz. He was born in Joplin, Missouri, and his family moved to Detroit when he was just 9 years old. He lived within blocks of the famed Bluebird Inn Jazz Club. And imagine this, at that time, the house band included the pianist Barry Harris, Pepper Adams on baritone saxophone, Paul Chambers on bass, and even Elvin Jones on drums. He was right down the block from that. He took up the alto sax at age 13, and there was no looking back after he heard the music of Charlie Parker. He knew then what he wanted to devote his life to. After spending his teens studying with Barry Harris and playing with many great jazz musicians there in the Detroit area, Charles moved to New York in 1959, which is a seminal year, as many probably know, in jazz history, and began an amazing 12-year association performing in the groups led by legendary Charles Mingus. So in 1988, he was actually featured in Clint Eastwood's Bird soundtrack as the saxophone voice of Charlie Parker. He has been on over 70 recordings to date and has performed and recorded with many other jazz greats, including Pepper Adams, Nat Adderley, Toshiko Akiyoshi, Randy Brecker, Jackie Byard, Ron Carter, Paul Chambers, Kenny Dorham, Billy Eckstein, Tommy Flanagan, Lionel Hampton. List goes on and on. All that Wynton Marsalis and Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra. He has been a resident composer for the San Diego Ballet since 2016. Charles' latest critically acclaimed release is entitled Jazz Dance Suites. So please welcome the great Charles Mcpherson to the program tonight, everyone.
All right, thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you, Charles. So great to have you here tonight.
Good, thank you.
Just gonna do it. All right, so we're gonna get underway. So I think we should just start out at the beginning here in terms of, what curious to find out. I'll start with you, Charles, and then go to Donald. What was your introduction? What is your recollection of your introduction to Charlie Parker's music?
Yeah, well, I was about 13, or maybe 14 years old. I was playing alto in the band at school, junior high school band, and a young tenor player, a little bit older than I, asked me had I heard Charlie Parker. I had not heard Bird before. And a couple of weeks later, I'm in this candy store, and there's a jukebox over there in the corner. I'll go over there, and I'm looking at some of the choices, and I see Charlie Parker. And it was, oh, well, this is the guy that my friend was telling me about. So I put my money in the jukebox, and the tune was Tico Tico. Some of those, Bird made a series of records south of the border and with Machito and people like that. So this was Tico Tico, and that was the first Bird record I ever heard. First time I ever heard Bird. And when I heard that, even though I'm basically really a little kid, I could play. I knew all my scales, but I had no concept of harmony or theory. So I didn't really know how to improvise. But when I heard Bird, I knew immediately something was different about him. I had heard other saxophone players and other people that played jazz. I heard other people that played, maybe a lot of notes. I had sort of heard that before. But what stood out for me, even at that young age, was with all the notes that Bird played, all of them made linear sense. There was a melodic logic to it. And I could hear that even as a little kid. His stuff made more sense to me, even though I didn't know what it was, but it just made perfect sense. And now, as I look back, I'll use terms like linear logic or melodic logic. Mm-hmm. And but me being that young, I would never use a term like that. For me, it was like the logic of it, and I could hear it immediately. And from that point on, I thought to myself that this is the way it should go, and what you should do is find your own notes. But the rhythm and playing the long lines and connecting them seamlessly with that kind of logic with your own notes, that's it. And that's what I said to myself, even at that age. That, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that was it. Tico Tico was
Tico
the tune,
Tico. Yeah. Donald, what was your introduction to Bird? How'd you come across and find his music?
My introduction is comical, but my father loved Charlie Parker and loved jazz music in general. Mm-hmm. But he used the recording of the little South Peanuts.
Yeah.
When we had three sisters, so we had four little kids. So some kind of way he got us into Salt Peanuts, and he would put Salt Peanuts from Live at Massey Hall, and Dizzy Gillespie would say Salt Peanuts, and then he would Salt Peanuts, and we would say it to him. Uh-huh. So we loved the song. It was something fun we did together. So whenever he wanted to calm us down, and get us listening to music, he would put on Salt Peanuts first and a lot of jazz. But he would play the game of singing Salt Peanuts with us, and we'd sit there and say Salt Peanuts all through the song, and then listen to the rest of the music. And wow. we all loved jazz as little kids, 2 and 3 years old, or whatever our ages were. We just loved the music. And then he bought a saxophone home, and I decided I wanted to try to understand what jazz was about at 16. And I was playing some of the pop music that was on the radio, and my father heard me. He said, "You're doing a pretty good job. Remember the Charlie Parker?" I said, "Yeah." So he put on Charlie Parker. So I figured, okay, I'm gonna pick this up just as quickly as I pick up this other stuff. But I had a rude awakening that this music was advanced. In Chicago, Joe Siegel used to call bebop the music of the future, and that's what it sounded like, the music of the future. But from that moment on, I've been chasing the Bird and using his lessons to help me to find out who I am. And one of the key things I read in high schools, when he said, if you don't live it, it won't come out of your horn. Music is about who you are, and basically just telling your story. Mm-hmm. So I went to experience playing and being in the company of all types of musicians, and then just telling the story as natural to me.
Yeah.
But a lot of times people learn the notes of Charlie Parker, but they forget to learn his ideals. And if you read that quote just sums up everything. It's like if you're writing a story, you can't really tell a story unless you were there. So we have to go out and live all of these things and figure out how it applies to us. And that's besides just the music that is beyond scope, is so hard and so incredible and so logical. As Maestro Charles Mcpherson said, it's just so logical when you look at it.
Yeah.
The lesson is to go live the life that's around you and put that in your music. They forget those ideals, which are very important.
Right.
Yeah.
Which,
well said.
it's so interesting that, and that's a very interesting point, because he came up obviously in the Kansas City scene, and he was surrounded, and Kansas City was so happening at that point in history as far as the music and just the culture and the liveliness of what I've read about Kansas City back in that time. But his living that life, he was such a young age to get into that music and to have that develop his sound and an approach to the horn at such a young age. What do you think? Was it, I mean, the scene impacting it? Like how do you think that happened for him at such a young age? Or what do you know? I mean, Charles, you even managed to you saw him live at a young age yourself, and that made a major impact in your life. I know.
Yeah. Well, I think, the thing that made Charlie Parker, there are a lot of things. He happened to be born in Kansas City, or in that area, where at that time, other than New Orleans, and right after New Orleans, Kansas City is straight up, and that's was a happening town. Now you have to put everything together. This was during Prohibition,
right?
So there was no liquor, the liquor was not flowing, and Kansas City was a wide open town. The political system in Kansas City allowed drinking, so people drank. Yeah. And so here's what that means. It means there's 1,000 clubs. There's a live band in all the clubs, and it becomes a mecca for musicians because the joint is jumping. I mean, there's plenty of work and plenty of clubs. So this is what, during the 30s and middle 30s and stuff. So early 30s. So Charlie Parker is all up in this. He's right in that. And so you got some of the greatest musicians in the world, and certainly saxophone players. People like Ben Webster, Herschel Evans, Lester Young, all these people. Coleman Hawkins is from St. Joseph. And then there were people from all over the country that would come to Kansas City because it was a wide open town. There was plenty of work for everybody. So Bird grew up in that. So then when there's a lot of, so he had great saxophone players around him. Now, he's an extremely smart kid, for sure, and extremely talented. So that's certainly the biggest part of it. But, he was in the right place at the right time, surrounded by great musicians. And he served an apprenticeship, He played with Buster Smith. Now, I don't know how many people know Buster Smith, but believe you me, I've heard some records. And from what I understand, Buster Smith, as a young man, was a wonderful alto player. That Bird totally copied this man. And I heard records of him, but he was already 60-something years old. But he still had it. And what he had was the long lines, and he played the chord changes really well. He could really connect them. And he kind of had that kind of rhythm. It's like some South Central United States rhythm, the way people feel time and syncopation there. And a great blues player, but he played change, he played harmony, he was good, he could arrange, he could write, and he knew the piano. Bird studied with this. I actually met this man. He was a very nice man, very warm person. So he was a father figure. And the other guy was a guy named Tommy Douglas, great clarinet player who studied at the Boston Conservatory. Bird learned from him and studied with him. So he had great clarinet player and an alto player, and of course Lester Young is there. So Bird heard Lester Young every night, and you know, a guy with talent, born, and he had I must say, he had a very privileged childhood. Bird was kind of middle class, upper middle class guy. His mother owned the property. She was a nurse. She was extremely lenient with him. He was pretty spoiled and self, you know, he was kind of privileged in a way. You know, he had his way. He was so he was able to go hang out and do these things, and that's how you get a Charlie Parker. Not just talent, but born in the right place at the right time. You know.
I read from a young age his mother used to dress him up and send him off to school always wearing a suit. He was always dressed to the nine, like his mother. And I think that must have somehow had ultimately impacted how he carried himself, you know, because his mother looked at, you know, treated him and looked at him as somebody, you know, special but dignified and you know, carry himself a certain way, and I can't help but think that stuck. Of course, his stature, he was almost 6 feet, he was like 5'11" or something. But how in New Orleans, I mean, in the history with New Orleans being such an epicenter for the creation of jazz, of course, how did, you know, I don't know as much about that flow from like New Orleans to Kansas City and vice versa at that time. Do you have a sense, or what have you heard about that, Donald, as far as, or what are you aware, what do you know of in terms of the relationship and the connectedness? It had to be there because the jazz came from, you know, came from New Orleans originally, and these cats were hearing about it and all hanging in both in New Orleans and I guess in Kansas City. And Kansas City became a mecca for jazz.
Well, the only person I really ever talked to about that aspect you're speaking of is was Count Basie. And how that happened, I was 19 years old playing Southside Country Club with Roy Haynes, and Count Basie was coming on after us. So he heard me playing, and then Count Basie sent word that he wanted to speak to me. And he me for about 5 hours talking about Kansas City, New Orleans, and New York.
Wow.
And how the music in Kansas City developed, and how he developed his style, and you know, the riffs that they were playing, and how he used it in his arranging, and the dynamics, you know, the way he could play loud and all of a sudden drop, just all kind of things about his music. But he told me that they all were listening, when they were young, they were listening to New Orleans music, of course, and about all the great tenor players, saxophone players, Charlie Parker included, you know, Ben Webster. Mm-hmm. He told me about a song Ben Webster recorded called New Orleans, where you can hear he's close to the New Orleans style on that song. And he told me to make sure I studied Benny Moten, the guy he played with. So he sort of explained to me that there's a lineage from from the guys in Kansas City,
Right.
checking out people in New Orleans, and then how that fed the music of New York. You know, you hear all those passing chords, what I call passing chords that Benny Moten and
Right.
Chu Berry, even Chu Berry was doing some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Those guys were, you know, passing on information.
Yeah.
And you can hear all of that in the sound of Charlie Parker.
Right.
And the blues, how they revered the blues in Kansas City. So I was fortunate, never got a chance to play with, but to have a really long conversation with Count Basie, where he gave me so much information, was trying to pass on so much that I forgot most of it when I left him, but there's some stuff that I carry to this day.
Wow.
I think Count Basie for wanting
Yeah.
to pass it to me.
Yeah, because that's before iPhones, obviously, and before you could like just record, have someone's preaching some wisdom. You had to like absorb it on the fly and remember it.
If you don't remember, it's gone.
Yeah.
So, but I did really think about it, and that's the way we learned back then, the young guys.
Yeah.
I'm almost positive that's the way Charles learned as well. You had to really pay attention to what guys were saying and think about it and go try to memorize it. I should have wrote a lot of stuff down, but I wasn't that slick. But I did retain some of it.
Yeah. Well, you know, the farther back you go, that's the way that younger players learn. You learn from older players that played better than you. And they would, because there was no such, I mean, when I was coming up, there were no jazz curriculums even in college, really, and certainly not in high schools and things like that. So we just played the regular traditional marches and, school thing, football games. There was no jazz band or jazz curriculum. Right. So the way we learned how to play is from records and from older players that were older that showed you. And usually when we got to a point that we played well enough to maybe play gigs, we would play with people, the band leaders would be older and knew more than we would. And we served an apprenticeship playing with people like that for a while. And then we would venture out and maybe get your own group or whatever. Right. That's a little bit different than today. I mean, that might be one of the problems with some of the really younger players, is that if they have a certain amount of talent, and some of them do, once they get out of school or whatever, if they might get a record date right away, and what they do, they sort of end up playing with people their own age, which is good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Right. But because it is different, it's not like it used to be. They don't really serve an apprenticeship playing for 3 or 4 years with people older and better, so they get all this knowledge passed down. And I think that might be not really good. It's better to have an apprenticeship for a while, and then you take people like Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker didn't have his band at 20 years. No. Charlie Parker was playing with Jay McShann. He played with Noble Sissle. He played with Cootie Williams. Yeah. He played with Buster Smith. He played with Tommy Douglas. He played with Earl Hines. He played with Dizzy Gillespie. Look at all of that. He was the greatest cat in the world. And he had played with big bands for, a year. He played, with Earl Hines for a couple of years. That's a long time. He's sitting next to lead alto players that are older than him that can really play. So Bird learned all of that lead alto, how to bend the notes and swell and shape notes. I mean, there's lessons to be learned and all that. And he learned from those old people like Chu Berry and stuff. He learned. And by the time he's, and then he absorbed all that. So that's very important. And so now you have academia, you have school, which is great. But the other way was great too. There,
Yeah. The oral tradition.
so you have your choices now. But anyway, that's kind of the way it was.
Yeah. Speaking of playing, can I put you on the spot? Charles, and ask you to share something on your horn with the
I'll
public,
just
and
play
then-
like some kind of like
And then
Kansas City style blues.
Yeah,
Just a couple courses.
And
Okay,
then-
I got to get my horn.
and then I'm gonna put the big chief up to the same.
All right.
Yeah, while he gets his, he's getting his horn. So
But yeah, Charles is right. Every time you learn something from an older musician, it connects you to the history of this music.
yeah,
And
Okay.
I call jazz
Okay. Oh,
evolutionary,
it's cool,
not
Charles.
revolutionary.
Okay. Okay, you know what? That's good, Donald. Just keep, because the little dog came in, and we got to secure this little guy, because otherwise he's
Oh.
gonna mess our show up.
okay.
So go ahead, Donald, and then I'll be right with you.
They're all good. We're live, folks. See, it's all live. No editing.
For me, the great players, you can hear the previous generations in that sound.
Yeah,
I can hear Lester Young and Buster and Charlie Parker sound, all the people
yeah.
from Kansas City.
Okay, I'm back now.
All right, cool,
All right.
Charles.
All
All right, take it away, Charles.
Okay.
Charles. is here. Yeah. Wow. All right.
Hey.
Man. Thank you, Charles.
Okay, thank you.
That's
What
the
I'm talking about right there.
That's the blues.
Yep.
That's the blues right there. Man, it's a history right there. History lesson right there.
Well, that's actually, that's so much a part of what jazz is. So, it's part of the language, and to I once played a record date with a bass player. I won't name who it is, but really a good bass player. And we played like a slow blues on this record date.
Mm-hmm.
And he says to me, "Why are we playing this?" And then I'm saying, "What do you mean? Why are we playing it?" You know? And he said, "Well, we don't have that anymore. I mean, there's no need for the blues to be." And he's equating it with the social differences and the way things aren't what they used to be. So to him, the blues really had no value. You know, it's like valueless. It's why play them? Because it's speaking of an earlier time when we had the blues and that. So why do it now? And so he's coming from this intellectual angle.
Right.
So I just gave him I just said, well, look, first of all, it has nothing to do with time. The blues is a great form. It expresses the human condition. It's expressing great sorrow, but yet still there's joy in it as well. These are human things. Human beings feel this now. They felt it 1,000 years ago, and they will feel it, even later. So that has nothing to do with it. That you might as well. You're not going to ask Bach not to play or somebody not to play a fugue.
I knew you were going to say
Because
fugue.
it was done already. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's part of the language.
Yeah.
So I kind of shut him up. He chilled out. But this is, I'm just showing you, and this is like a great, just wonderful bass player that actually he really believed that. So, but for me, the blues are, I don't care what you can do, many things. That it doesn't mean that's all you're supposed to do.
Right.
But it's always supposed to be an integral part.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing that separates it from the other musics.
Yeah.
And it's part of the identity of what jazz is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, Big Chief Donald Harrison.
Yes, sir.
Can we get you to play something for us as well?
Yeah, I'll
Share
play.
something?
I wrote a song called "One for Bird." It's also a blues, but it's medium tempo or up tempo. But I try to capture the spirit of the maestro Charlie Parker. It's One for Bird.
Down on. All right, Holmes.
All right, home.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, that's definitely definitely hear the bird influence in that. It holds up. Yeah, beautiful.
Good, man. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, the virus. So, yeah, speaking of the blues, I mean, you mentioned something, Donald, and I think and Charles, you were both speaking about this with me the other day. How I think Donald, you said basically that how Bird was inclusive and not exclusive when it came to the music that he exposed himself to and that he expressed through his playing. So I think that's an interesting. So I'd love for you to speak more about that. I know that's part of what you both do in your music, and Donald, you've run the gamut in so many styles of music and played them all authentically. And I've seen you at Jazz Fest in New Orleans on different stages, from the Congo Square stage to the jazz tent, playing with different projects. So yeah, just let's talk about that.
Well, go ahead, Donald. I'll follow you on this.
Yeah, I mean, Charles was speaking of all the influences he can hear in Charlie Parker's playing, and I sort of have the same ideas about how he put all those different things that he heard into his music. And if you really study the career instead of a few records, you'll see that he was on all types of recordings. You know, Charlie Parker with strings. The thing that made that so incredible was that it was really like the pop music of its day. But when you put Bird in it, then it turns into pure genius. You know, instead of one of the great singers of the day, and he transcends that style of music and makes it genius. And then as a jazz artist, there's stuff in there that comes from the classical world, from the jazz world, from blues world. So you're dealing with all these, when you play Bird with strings, you're dealing with all these aspects. You talked about the music south of the border, all that stuff, Tico from Brazil, the Cuban music, and then the blues that he just played from Kansas City blues. Yeah, the blues I played, all these incredible standards and how they put another influence into the music. But they were drawing upon Charlie Parker and I guess Dizzy Gillespie and a lot of those great musicians. They were part of the continuum, in my estimation, that they drew upon everything they heard. You read about Sidney Bechet, and he says he's an amalgamation of everything he heard. He just put it in the music. Duke Ellington, everywhere he went, if he went to India, he wrote something about India. All these different places you can hear.
Right.
And dealing with all of this different. And Bird was the same way. You know, Stravinsky, everything. It was in his playing, and he was, in my estimation, seeing all the beauty around him and looking at things for the beauty and filtering through his life and his feeling, as he said, and it all came to be a wonderful, transcendent music of the ages that's going to speak at any point in time. Because if you understand anything about music or have the feeling of music, as Charles said, he felt it immediately, and I felt it immediately too. You feel it, you know something else is going on. So,
right,
including be inclusive is the lesson there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was pretty eclectic, and he was, Bird listened to everything, and you could hear quotes. A Charlie Parker solo, you might hear some cartoon, a quote from a cartoon. You might hear a quote from Stravinsky, Firebird or something like that. You might hear something from Little Night music, Mozart. You might hear just anything. So it just shows you that this man listened to everything. He listened to just a wide range of music, and he was comfortable everywhere. As Donald said, when it came time to do the Afro-Cuban music with Machito and Chico Farrell and people like that, he was spot on. He didn't have to change anything. And one reason why is because in New York, there was a club right next to Birdland called the Palladium, way back. And they would have dances there. It's a big ballroom. And they would have Cuban, Latin dances and Cuban and all of that, and people like Machito and all these great Latin and Cuban players played this place, and with people really dancing, and I'm talking about dancing, where Bird and Dizzy would would just go on off nights and set in with them and play on top of the Latin, do that. They did it all the time. So when it came time to record, I mean, Bird, he's right there, and he just beautiful with the music. He plays it like he owns it. It's not like some guy reading changes. He plays like he owns it, so well, and that's, and he's just very eclectic. He had no barriers. He wanted to study with Edgar Varese.
Right.
He already knew who Varese was. He knew about the music. Sheila Jordan told me that Gil Evans had in Midtown Manhattan had a pad up there, and everybody used to go by Gil Evans's house, including Miles, Bird, people like Jerry Mulligan, and they would all hang out. And Sheila Jordan and Bird would come up there, and Bird, she said, told them, this is in the late 40s and middle 40s, that learn something about other art. Don't just know music. Go to the museums and look at paintings. She said Bird could go to a museum and identify Marc Chagall, Miro. He could go and knew all the artists, who they were, the style. He knew all of the classic books. And he said, if you really want to have something to play, other than just a bunch of chord changes, you have to learn how all art is connected, how painting is connected to music, how music is connected to literature, how it's all, it's a line, it's a connection. And in order for you to be broad as a person, you have to learn all that. So when you play, you're not just playing F and D and G, you're playing life and a broad understanding. And Harold Land told me that when he was in California, he would go see Bird, and Bird on the breaks would be in the back room reading books about quantum mechanics. So Bird was already into quantum mechanics. So and we got these stories of Bird being, just kind of but Bird was very intellectual. He would be reading books, and Harold would want to talk about music, and Bird would say, I don't want to talk about music. And he was talking about quantum mechanics. He said, you need to learn something else besides music.
Right.
And so Bird knew about quantum mechanics. He knew about all this stuff. And this is what I mean. This is why Charlie Parker is Charlie Parker. He's more than just a saxophone player or a musician. His soul and his spirit and his intellect is truly bigger than life. He's just a great thinker that happens to play the saxophone.
Wow, so well said, Charles. That's amazing. And it's interesting because he in turn influenced so many artists in other disciplines, Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg.
Yeah, all those people.
And painters who were greatly influenced by his music, even up to more recently, like Basquiat, the painter, was very influenced by Bird, and of course going back, I believe, to Jackson Pollock and others. Maybe I don't want to misspeak on it, but a number of other painters that were really checked out Bird, Picasso, I think maybe, and others, but
and Bird painted as well. Also, Seth, Bird painted himself.
That I didn't know.
That he would do that. There's some in some of these Bird books you can see paintings that he's doing. So he's really a Renaissance man. He's a saxophone player that knows about a whole bunch of things other than the saxophone. That's why when you hear him play, he's playing all of his everything that he is, which is really pretty. You know, he's a real intellectual, and on top of that, he's kind of like a street guy too. So he has these two different things. He can sit and talk about quantum mechanics, but he could also drink wine on the corner with some guy. You know, he's comfortable everywhere. You know, and when you hear some of Bird's interviews, you know, where he's being interviewed, if you notice how Bird speaks, his speech pattern is exactly how he plays. These long sentences that are really connected well with perfect grammar, never hemming and hawing. It's just straight on. Like we like to play a tune in 1942 written by my worthy constituent, Mr. Dizzy Gillespie. We sincerely hope you enjoy. You know, I can't even do it. Salt peanuts.
Oh, yeah, you just
and he's flat on. He never at a loss for words. Somebody asks him a question, it's brrr, that's it.
Right.
And he nails it, and that's it. You know, and he played the same way.
He knew who he was.
Yeah, and he had really, you know, command. He had, you know, he had command over a lot, you know.
And at the same time, I'm reading a lot about him. He had, like so many great artists, he had great humility in what he did. He didn't want people. He didn't apparently like people or want people like following him around and idolizing him, and in that way, he just wanted them to experience what he had to say and express himself. But he, as I understood it, had a lot of humility. He wasn't running around telling people he was the greatest alto saxophone player and invented a new language. He didn't want that.
His ego, he didn't have that kind of ego. His ego was different. Because, I mean, when you see Bird put the horn in his mouth and his eyes are open, you can tell that his thought process is totally different than a lot of people. He's totally almost in another kind of zone. Somebody asked him once, what are you thinking about when you play? And Bird said something very interesting. He said, sometimes I look down at my fingers and I'm surprised it's me. Wow. That's a hell of a statement. He's surprised that it's his fingers. So that shows you he's connected. And I'll say this and I'll stop. I saw him in Detroit play a gig with another saxophone player. And I could tell this saxophone player was very threatened by Charlie Parker. He was older. He was a tenor player, and he played really good, really. But I could tell by the body language and some of the expressions on his face that he was a little bit jealous of Bird. And because everybody was there wanting to see Charlie Parker, and they weren't really paying a lot of attention to him. And I could tell that annoyed the saxophone player. Now, when I looked at Charlie Parker, I thought to myself, now Charlie Parker has got to be aware of this guy because he's got certain looks on his face and his body language. And I could tell that Charlie Parker did not care anything about what this guy is thinking. And when this guy played, Charlie Parker had a big smile on his face and was like wanting the guy to play better, actually. Right. But when Bird played, the guy is over in the corner kind of scowling and being like threatened. And it was like, look at the difference between the two egos. Bird is actually encouraging this guy. Right. And then when Bird plays, he's over there kind of nervous and really hoping Bird doesn't play good. And it was like, okay, well, this shows you the kind of ego that he has and the kind of ego Bird has, as great as he was. It was totally different than a lot of people. He didn't care anything about that. And he just played and he's going to play and that's it, you know.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Donald, what you had such a, I mean, there's so much we could talk about from just what you just said there. It's just a thank you for sharing these firsthand experiences. It's incredible. And really a treasure. It's really a treasure, Charles. And thank you so much. I'm sure people are enjoying hearing these stories that are just, timeless and just so special. So I wanted to ask Donald, you played, you had a direct connection to Bird through your long standing relationship on the bandstand with the great legendary drummer Roy Haynes. And I'm curious. I mean, Roy played with everyone from Billy. I mean, we could spend the rest of the time just naming who Roy played with, but I mean, it's
From
incredible.
Louis Armstrong, Eric Dolphy.
Yeah.
From Louis Armstrong to Eric Dolphy and everybody in between.
Yeah, in between, and Billie Holiday to Sarah Vaughan. So, and Bird. So.
And Bird and Lester Young and Train.
Yeah.
Right.
And
The
Monk.
whole thing.
And Monk.
And he's on some James Brown records too.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yes. Some of those records, there are some jazz guys. I tell you who else is on some of them. Kenny Burrell. But Roy Haynes is on some of them records. So some of that funk drumming that you're hearing, some of that is Roy Haynes.
You never even told me that.
Yeah. But that's him, though. Because Roy Haynes had that same kind of rhythm as Charlie Parker. To me, they have the same kind of rhythm, that syncopation. That's why Roy Haynes is. It doesn't make any difference who he's playing with. He could be playing with some swing guy. He could be playing with Arnett. He could be playing with Train, Moto. He could be playing with Bud Powell. He could be playing with Sarah Vaughan. And there's no date. There's no such thing as old, because it's just good. Right. And the swing is there, and the vibe and the groove. There's no date on that. Some things have no date on them, and there are some players, there's no date. It's just good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's why they can play with a variety of people, and it doesn't make any difference who they're playing with.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Donald, go ahead.
Yeah, but one of the things Roy told me about is the way they played. He called it question and answer. And he sort of showed me the way he played, how to do it. And you can, if you take it like a head, but the drums, so he's catching some of the phrases on the drums and he's answering in some places.
Yeah.
And they knew how to do the same thing as a team, the whole band really, when they were soloing.
Yeah.
They knew when the spaces were and how to really just talk.
I think we lost you there for a second, Donald.
Yeah, you kind of froze up, Donald, like the image is frozen.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Little technical difficulty there. Hopefully he'll come back. And we'll finish that. Charles, how would you feel about, are you up for playing one more number, perhaps?
Oh, yeah, sure. You can do that.
I think of your choosing, of course.
Okay, all right. Let me think. Maybe I'll play a ballad or something.
Sure, that'd be beautiful.
Okay, like Embraceable You or something like that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's a very famous Bird rendition of that for sure.
Yeah, let me see if I can get this together.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. Oh,
All right.
wow.
Am I
Embrace it.
back?
You're back, Donald.
All right. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, that's all right. It's just broke, but you came back quickly, so that's good. Here now. Could I trouble you to that was thank you, Charles. That was just that was beautiful.
All right.
Embraceable
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
That was really special.
I think this is
You cool
my
to
turn?
yeah.
Let me get my horn. What happened? My horn is acting crazy.
Oh really?
First the internet, now my horn.
Oh
We're gonna get it right though.
yeah. We get a fix.
Yeah. All right. All right.
Ornithology,
All
right?
right.
Right, Donald?
All right.
Yeah, I'm good.
It's ornithology, no?
That's
Yes.
ornithology, yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
that's it.
Let's think of
Charlie
the name.
Park. Yeah, Charlie Parker classic.
The tribute to himself.
by Charlie, yeah. Beautiful. Wow. So I guess we have a few more minutes here to wind things down with what has been just a really engaging conversation with you both. I can't thank you enough for
Well, thank you.
sharing. You're spending some time and just bringing the lightness into into these otherwise somewhat troubled times we're living in. So so it's really beautiful and to have the be able to hear that music and hear your horns. I mean, conveys everything right there. Everything you talked about was right there in both your musical statements on both those compositions.
Well, thank you.
So let's, since we have a few minutes, I want to let's talk about what you're both up to and what people can look forward to. I know, Charles, you have a new record that just came out.
Yeah, I sure do. Can you see
Jazz
that?
Jazz Dance Suites.
Okay, yeah. Jazz Dance Suites, yeah. It represents about 5 years of me being a resident composer for the San Diego Ballet Company here in San Diego.
Fantastic.
And my daughter is one of their soloists.
Wow.
And she's been with them for about 8 years.
Wow.
And so it's three. The CD is there are 3 different suites on the CD. One suite is entitled what is it? Song of Songs. The other one is called well, it's one tune called Reflections on there, and the other suite is Sweet Synergy Suite. So they're and it represents, the Song of Songs is based on the old biblical story in the Old Testament of the young lady in love with King Solomon, and it doesn't happen. You know, it doesn't work out. So it's basically about unrequited love, but you know, so that's what that is. And the other one is more Afro-Cuban, Afro-Latin. The other suite called Sweet Synergy Suite. So it's available, you know, on my website, you know.
Yeah.
And it represents just me writing for dance music. So it's a little different than the regular, you know, music I do. It's written for people that are dancing and did dance.
Yeah.
So you know, I had to write all of this material with dancers in mind,
Right.
and with episodic storylines, you know. And so it was a different kind of writing. I'd never done that kind of stuff before, but it makes you call up different things within
Yeah.
to make that work, you know. And of course, the challenge was trying to balance improvisation with certain things that has nothing to do with improvisation, because the dancers are not improvising.
Right.
So you have to write compositions that are certain things are set in cement, but yet and still you got to have room for some improvising.
Yeah.
And that was a little bit tricky, but I finally got the hang of it.
And
And that's
sorry.
what I'm doing. That's my latest project.
Yeah. And we were blessed that you shared some of that music when you last played at the Jazz Standard pre-pandemic.
Yeah, that's right. Because that was like a rehearsal as well.
Yeah.
And then we did it in the Van Gelder Studios.
Very famous.
With some really, you know, Terrell Stafford and,
Oh, that's great.
you know, people like that, David Wong, Jeb Patton.
Yeah. Yo Tom was on.
Yeah, Yotam Silverstein, Billy
Yeah.
Drummond, young singer named Lorraine Teresa.
Mm.
Who else was on that? And Randy Porter also shared piano, the piano
Beautiful.
chair as well.
Well, yeah. So folks, go to Charles' website and check out Jazz Dance Suites and order yourselves a copy, and you will be delighted. I am sure. I know
All right,
that.
thank you.
Thank you, Charles. And Donald, tell us.
Yes, sir.
Tell us. I know you've got a lot of things. You got some singles that we're releasing.
Yeah.
And I know you always have so many irons in the fire, as you will. But yeah, share some of what you got going on.
Yeah, I think I'm doing too much right now, so I'm slowing down on projects. But what I have, I'm releasing is crazy that he's talking about dance, but I'm releasing well, this is people dancing the way they dance in New Orleans. I'm releasing a single on Watermelon Man, followed up by Let Me See Your Second Line in New Orleans. Second line is the cultural music of New Orleans. jazz
Mhm,
music,
of course.
just traditional jazz. Now there's a new style of modern uh, traditional jazz. But I took Watermelon Man and put it in the context of jazz music that you dance to in New Orleans, but from a modern jazz perspective. So
Mm,
it's a song that people can dance to down
right.
here in New Orleans, and all the people who understand this music. They, I'm almost positive they're gonna feel that
Yeah.
they can either sit down and listen to it, or they can get up and dance to it. So just bringing back connecting back to the aspect of dancing in New Orleans.
Right.
And I have a new CD come out, double CD, called the Eclectic. It's the Eclectic Jazz Revolution of Unity. And like you said earlier, I went and played a lot of different types of music. So I figured out how to put all of those different styles of music, like soul music, R&B, hip hop, reggae, and all the popular dance music of today,
Yeah.
and back into a jazz context where it's swinging, but still has those underpinnings in it. Uh, I'm debuting my first orchestral on this record. The last thing is an orchestral piece I wrote for Congo Square.
Mm,
But I'm also doing something I call multi-genre music. So I'm going to be releasing multi-genre songs and that, because I like a lot of different styles of music, and I bring it all back to jazz. A song
right.
where I'm writing a song where it can be played in any genre of music. And then we record. I've been doing this for 10 to 15 years, but never put it out. We record a song in all these different styles, but
Right.
true to each style. But then when you hear the jazz version, you can hear how all those different styles influence how I'm thinking the jazz. So for me, these are the ideals of Charlie Parker in today's music. And that's what's going on. I'm working on
Great.
I invented a new concept for recorded music. So working on software for that. I got some patents for that. And
Amazing. Yeah, you're
just a lot of
busy.
this. That's just some of the things I can't even mention. It's
Yeah.
too much to even remember. But
Yeah. I know you
I'm
were, and during Jazz Fest, I remember you burning the candle on both ends. Still, I mean, we missed
yeah,
Jazz Fest this year, unfortunately, because of the pandemic.
yeah,
But I know I've seen you in many a Jazz Fest and hopping from one gig to the next for days, for 2 weeks, like for days on end, and
and
going
like
with
Charles said, no matter all styles, just any style of music, just let's just play.
yeah.
You know, if I like it,
Yeah,
I want to
yeah.
play it.
Yeah, let me tell you, this is an interesting story about just all styles and having the heart to actually engage. Sonny Stitt told a friend of mine that him and Bird used to have a game they would play, and it was Bird and Sonny Stitt. And what the name of the game was, one of them, they would start out downtown Broadway in New York, and one would be on the other side. One would be on one side of the street, and the other one on the other side. And so the game was this: go to every bar that had a live band in there, and play with whomever was there. I don't care if it was a Greek band playing in 11/8, you play with them. If it was some Irish band, you play with them. If it was some blues band, you play. And the name of the game was to play for drinks. This was their way of getting free drinks, because both of these guys like to really drink. So they would go in and offer to set in for drinks. And then the whole thing was to meet at right up there at Columbus Circle after both of them have done this, and meet up there and talk about their experiences.
Wow.
Now think about
Wow.
about that, or what that is. Imagine having the nerve to even think to do it, and then actually do it. And you had to play with whomever was there, and whatever they're playing, you had to do that. You get your free drinks, and then talk about it at the end of the, up there at Columbus Circle and Broadway. And Now, how many people would do that? This is what I mean by some of those old guys, man. They were just bigger than life.
Yeah.
They were some serious, just had the nerve to just do anything. And that's a great example. And, you know, just to do that and play with, I don't care who they are, play with them. Get drunk, meet at the end of Broadway there, and then talk about, well, I played with this man, we played this. These guys were sad, these guys were pretty good, and this is what these guys did.
Wow.
So there
Wow,
you go.
thank you for that, man. That's some great information. You just,
Yeah, that's some hell of it. And Sonny Sid said that. I mean, this is really something, man, to do that, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think
And somebody, Mundell Lowe, told me that Bird would be at a club with some big band playing. He would ease up on, you know, he would creep to the bandstand a little at a time, and then he would, some kind of way, they would ask him to sit in, and he would go sit in and play lead alto.
wow.
Yeah, and didn't look at, they don't know the music. Now,
Wow.
that really requires some nerve, man, to go up there and sit and play. Okay, I'll do it. Sit and play lead. Really? I mean,
Nerve
and so
still.
this is what I'm talking about, you know.
wow,
Yeah.
man. Wow. I wish we had more time. I wish we could go all night here speaking
Yeah,
of
yeah,
like
okay. Well, it's
pulling
been
late
fun,
nights,
man.
and
Thanks.
it's been fantastic. The stories have been great. The playing just fantastic, and what a treat for everybody. And I just thank you both. Thank you, Big Chief Donald Harrison. Thank you, Charles Mcpherson, for sharing your time with us and for
Okay, well,
sharing
thank you.
these incredible stories and passing them on to so many people now that are watching, and we'll be able to
Okay.
pass it on. That's how we keep the circle of life on this subject going, right?
All right, good. Well, thanks
Bird,
for having us.
Bird lives.
Yes,
And I
sir.
just want to say thank you, Maestro Charles McPherson, for those stories and your playing, because you enriched me more than you can know. Just let me know all of that stuff. Appreciate it.
Well, that's beautiful. Thank you. You sound beautiful. Beautiful. So thank you so much.
Thank you both. All right. Well, this will conclude another one of our Jazz Series programs, and we hope you all enjoyed that. We want to thank again our co-presenters, Jazz Standard and NJ Pack, and our sponsor, TD Bank, for their support. And we look forward to seeing you next time. On November 10th, we'll be joined by the great Maria Schneider and Donnie McCaslin to discuss her latest release called Data Lords. So please look out for that and join us for that as well. And gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm gonna say just so long for a brief time.
Okay.
And we'll see you again. We'll have to pick this up another time somehow, some way.
Okay.
You know?
Well, thanks a lot,
I
Seth.
want more stories. Okay.
Thanks a lot. See you guys.
Thank you. Stay safe. Stay safe,
you.
everybody. Be well.
All
Okay.
right, see you soon. Thank you.
See ya. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.